into, and it's a part of that invisible shield that keeps people away. I used to work with a guy like that, and I wanted to just choke him and tell God he died. Because that's all he would do. Moan and groan, complain and argue about everything. Nothing you could do was right. The second piece of this invisible force field of ours is a judgmental attitude in Matthew chapter 7. It's an awesome passage where Jesus is talking about not judging critically, not taking the speck out of your brother's eye, or picking on the smallest thing you see in other people when in your own eye you have a plank. I call them sawdust pickers. There may have some justification for complaining. There might be something wrong with us. Nobody's perfect. I hate to say it, nobody is perfect. Everybody has something you could pick on if you really wanted to. The problem with this person is they make it a lifestyle. It's what they do all the time. And getting around them just brings you down. You'll never be able to measure up to this kind of person. It's really a judgmental spirit about them. If you look hard enough, I found this in life, and I'm sure you have too. If you look hard enough and often enough, you will find something wrong with something or somebody. You will. But here's the other part of the puzzle too. The very thing that I usually pick on, the very thing that I usually judge others on, I see it in myself. I have it in myself. So I've learned silence sometimes is the better part of valor in those situations. Nobody wants to be around somebody who's judgmental. It is probably one of the key components to this invisible force field that we seem to have around us sometimes, is to be judging others all the time. Because believe me, if we look for it, it's always there. The third thing is this: a critical spirit. In James chapter 4, I love that book of James. It's a book of action. It's a book about our faith being put to the test. The rubber meets the road in the book of James. No messing around here. And in James chapter 4, in this particular verse, it says, do not slander your brothers. Do not slander. Do not incriminate those around you. Don't hurt others' reputations, especially if you don't know their story. Everybody has a story. There's a reason why we are the way we are. There's a reason why you see people the way that you see them. There's a reason why that person's out on the street. There's a reason why that person is down and out. There's a story behind the addict. There's a story behind the one that you really don't want to be a part of. And we tend to be critical and ruin others' reputations even though we don't know the whole story. That's part of the force field that surrounds a lot of people. It's a force field that sometimes, I dare say it, surrounds the church. And it's because we don't know other people's stories. You don't know my story, all of it. And it would be easy to criticize me for some of the things you would see me do or say. Unless you know my story, it doesn't make any sense. Criticizing and being critical and having a critical spirit is damaging. It can damage other people's reputations just for the sake sometimes of making ourselves look good. It's part of that force field. The fourth thing is this: by playing favorites. God says in Romans chapter 2, God does not show favoritism. Thank God he doesn't, because how many of us would be here if he did? This old boy would not be here if he did. Chances are maybe you might not either. God doesn't show favorites. He doesn't judge you. He doesn't judge me based on what I'm wearing. Thank goodness. He doesn't judge you. He doesn't judge me based on our social position in the community. Thank goodness. He doesn't judge you. He doesn't judge me. He doesn't favor one over the other because of the money we have, or the job title we have, or the degree we hold, or where we live, or where we don't live. Our value, your value, isn't based on that. Thank goodness. But sometimes we play favorites. We favor one kind of person over another because of those very things. Because so-and-so has thus and this, we want them to have the best seat in the house. We want them to have the most say. No, God doesn't play favorites. His people should not play favorites. I should not play favorites. I don't want to look. The Bible says that God does not judge on externals. He bases his judgments more accurately on what's in a man's heart. not on the outside appearance of a man or a woman. No favorites. No favorites here. You want to not shine? You want to live a faulty lifestyle as far as relationships go, as far as influence goes, as far as being able to shine well for Christ? Then do these things. And immediately, you won't see it. A force field will come up around you. It'll be invisible, and you'll have the radar out. That radar will be working on you. And as soon as somebody comes up that fits one of those categories, guess what happens? As soon as they get close to you, bam! Explosion, disaster, or better yet, this. They never get close enough to get to know us. We never get close enough to get to know them. That's not relational. That's not what God has done with us. If God has done that, if he had that kind of attitude towards us, none of us would be in this room. I wouldn't be here. God does not show favoritism. What we need is to take down that force field. If we really want to shine, really, if we really want to shine God's love in the world, if we really want to shine what Christ has done for us, if we really want to bring it out into the open and have that relational influence on other people, there's other things that we can do in place of those things. And the next part in your notes says this. But before we get to that, there's just a couple of verses I got to read because they're so good. The first one is this out of Proverbs 4:18. This comes out of the Message. And I know the Message is a paraphrase, so please forgive me. But I really like the way it says this, okay? Proverbs 4:18 says, "The ways of right living people," okay? I just described kind of some of the things that are faulty living. The ways of right living people glow with light. And this is the cool part, especially if you're getting as old as I am. The longer they live, the brighter they shine. There's hope for me still. There's hope for us still. The longer we live, the brighter we shine. You know what that means? The more experience you and I ought to have, and the better we ought to get along with each other and those around us. The longer we live, the brighter we ought to shine. Man, I know some people that have influenced my life that are much, much older than I. I read their books. I may not know them personally. Maybe you know some people you know personally. Wise, generous, kind-hearted folks that just shine. They just glow with what God has done in their life. And when you get around them, it's just like this light beam that just hits you. And you know it. You sense it. You feel it. They shine. I don't know about you, but I've always told my family, the older I get, I really do want to shine. I want to go into the box shining for God. Listen to this next verse. It comes out of Daniel. Same version. Again, forgive me. A paraphrase, I know. Men and women who have lived wisely and well shine brightly like the cloudless, star-strewn night skies. And those who put others on the right path to life will glow like stars forever. I'm going to take that one to the bank. I want to take that one to the bank. Because in this life, I want to live well. I want to live rightly. I want to relate properly to those that are around me. I want to shine God's love and what He's done for me onto others. Do you remember what God has done for you? Man, I tell you what, I came to know the Lord later in life. I was in my early 20s when I gave my heart to Christ. And before that, I was a mess. I had issues. I was selfish. I didn't talk much. I really didn't. My story was full of pain and hurt like a lot of people's is and are. Until I met Christ. The first thing I did, the first thing that I remember was that love that God had for me. I could not believe it. I couldn't believe it. The first thing I did was go home and I told my mom, "Mom, you're not going to believe this. I finally understand what God is all about." I grew up a Catholic and how much He loves me. It blew me away. Do you remember that? Do you remember what God has done in your life?